Today I'll be talking about the Japanese hairstyle called the Chonmage. I will be going through the beginning, the rise, and then the fall. So it all starts in the Heian period, which is going to be from 794 to 1185. Now, during this time in Japan, it's a very closed off nation, meaning that the only main influences at this point is China. And so, when the Chinese first adapted this top hat as part of their social standing to show who was rich and who was the top man, Japan also quickly adapted and started using this as well. You can see right here, these hats didn't really have stability on its own. If it was just laying on top of their head, meaning that if there was a strong gust of wind, it would just topple off. And instead of using string, which only a few of the hats had, they instead brought their hair up in kind of a upward ponytail called the top knot to keep it in place right there. Then we're gonna skip a few years because not much happens to the Sengoku period. Now, the Sengoku period is right when Japan has a lot of internal conflict. Everyone wants to be the shogun, the powerful samurai guy, and so they're all fighting for it. Meaning that there's new armor, there's new warrior gear to protect people. And one of the new gear is called the kabuto. It's a helmet that they used to obviously protect their heads. Now, there was two problems with this helmet. The first one was that it weighed around 6 to 11 pounds, which is really heavy. And not only that, but as you this poorly printed picture here showed that it was only bronze, so there was no cushioning to the helmet itself, which is a problem because if there's no cushioning and someone hits you in the head with their sword, well, you're gonna get concussed. And if you get concussed in war, you're probably gonna die, whether you were in war or not. And so, to combat this problem, they folded their top knot that they used to have up for those Chinese hats down to create cushioning with the hair. Now, that solved one of the problems. But the second problem was that Japan's summers are so hot and so humid that if you have something like 6 to 11 pounds on your head, it's going to make all your blood rush to your face and you're going to faint from overheating and exhaustion. Which, if you were to faint in war due to overheating or exhaustion, you're going to die, which again defeats the purpose of a helmet. And so, to combat that problem, they shaved this part of their head, which is going to be this part of your head, so that it would help with airflow. So now their heads are cooler and they have cushioning on their head, which solves the problem. Now we move on to the next period, which is called the Edo period. Now, the only difference with the Edo period and the Sengoku period is that the Edo period is much more peaceful compared to the Sengoku. There's no more internal fighting. Now, that doesn't mean that hairstyle died down. Actually, the hairstyle only improved from here. The reason that is because the chonmage at this point was only worn by samurai, Japanese strong military men. And so people adored the hairstyle, this cool hairstyle that the cool strong guys were wearing. Problem is, in Japan at the time, if you offended a samurai, he could legally cut you down on the streets, meaning that if you wore the same hairstyle as him, he would get offended and he would cut you down on the streets. But people still wanted to wear this type of hairstyle because it was cool. They looked up to it. And so they did an alternative where they just make this top bun bending down on the forehead right here a bit shorter. So it was a smaller chonmage to show the samurais, look, I respect you, but I'm not copying downright for you. And then we move on to the Meiji period. Now, the Meiji period is when World War II broke out and also ended in Japan. And as we know, Japan was on the Axis side of the war, and the Axis lost World War II, meaning that Japan was in a very negative state at this time. They weren't open, meaning that World War II and them losing forces them to open their gates. But they're very backed up compared to their other countrymen and their neighbors. And so when Japan opens their borders, a lot are forced to go with Western customs and societies. That being switched from traditional clothes to Western clothes, and their chonmage to Western hairstyles. Except, as you can see right here, there's one man who is still wearing traditional clothing and a top knot. His name was Irakura Tomomi. Now, the interesting thing is he's actually one of the main reasons Japan was able to industrialize and modernize so quickly. So why is he wearing traditional clothing right here? Well, at the time, Iwakura Tomomi believed that if the Japanese were to cut off their top knot and throw away this traditional clothing, it would be the end of Japan. That is what will officially destroy Japan. And so he was very against modernizing, very against cutting the chonmage, because again, chonmage had such significant history and such significant powerhouse in Japan. So why did he cut it off and ended up looking like this old westernized man right here? Well, there's two reasons. And one of them was his son. He had two sons at the time, currently attending an American university. Now he goes to America to visit these sons, and when he gets there, his sons basically bash him. They aren't holding back, and in summary, they basically tell him that instead of an honor towards Japan, he is creating a dishonor, and that it is making it harder for the neighboring countries to befriend and write treaties with Japan. And he's very hurt by this because, again, he is this, Japanese government person who, while others went towards Western, he stayed traditional. So this hurt him very much that his own sons were very opposed to him. And the second part is that when he's in America visiting his sons, he sees just how modernized America is compared to Japan. Now, right now, Japan does have some modern-based cars, but it's not that common. And not only that, but the most common mode of transportation is a human-pulled handcar or a wagon. Because at the time, for a long time, Japan only samurais could carry horses, meaning common people were mostly pushed by handcarts. Compared to that, America currently had steam engines and elevators and many modernized things that he had never seen before. There's actually a journal entry of him saying, "I was put in a small metal box and suddenly it went up." He was talking about elevators, and he was just so fascinated by this. But now this gave him only two options. The first one being, does he somehow keep the traditional and still get the modernized technology and the industries, or does he go to westernization? Does he westernize, get rid of the top knot, so that he could get Japan to modernize quicker? In the end, he did choose to get rid of the top knot and industrialize. But thanks to that, Japan was able to industrialize and modernize so much quicker than most other countries, especially for a country who lost a world war. Now, it is very sad that Japan lost a piece of its culture, but it was never actually lost. It was never, for a short time, the hairstyle was banned, but it doesn't mean it's not allowed anymore. Japan's traditional clothing actually still lives on quite a lot. It was only just the hairstyle that really died down. And that is the rise and the fall of the Japanese Chonmage. Thank you very much.